Hello, and welcome to 2-Minute Talk Tips. I'm Bill Monroe. Today's tip, watch your beam. I'm talking about the light that comes from a projector pointed at a screen during your presentation. Generally, you always want to be aware of the beam so that you don't accidentally walk across it during the middle of your session. If you accidentally look directly at it, you can find yourself temporarily blinded by the bright light coming out of the projector. If you're not aware of where you're standing and where your beam shines, you could end up blocking your slides and the information you want your audience to see. Now, there are a couple of things you can do to manage your beam. First of all, be aware of it. Don't cross the beam unless you actually want to cross the beam. Make sure that if you're crossing it, you're making a decision to cross it. And that's going to be most effective when you're making a transition from one point to another. Another way you can manage the beam is to use the B and W keys on your laptop keyboard. During a PowerPoint slideshow, if you press the W key, that will just give you a completely blank white PowerPoint slide, giving you a blank space. If instead you press the B key on your keyboard, that will give you a pure black slide. What this does for you is it turns off the visuals. So this can be a great tool to use when you want your audience to focus on you by just making the screen go blank. The other thing you need to do with beam management is before your presentation begins, go ahead and check for silhouettes. Turn on your PowerPoint slideshow, put your slide up, and then go to the back of the room and look at the screen. Is there anything blocking the screen? Is there anything casting a strange shadow on the screen? This could be something that's on the table. It could be the corner of your laptop display itself that's blocking part of it. And of course, the other reason to be aware of your beam is that if you happen to be proficient in shadow puppets, it gives you a great opportunity to show your favorite bird or dog or shadow puppet of your boss. Stay tuned. And after the break, we're going to talk about how you can enhance your credibility as a speaker. I'm recording this episode on the evening of Sunday, January 29th in 2017. My original plan for this episode was actually to do an analysis of the new president's inaugural address in a nonpartisan way. I wanted to sort of focus on the rhetorical choices that he made and the structure of the speech and what we as speakers can learn from it. That was actually part of the original plan as far back as September or October when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with this podcast. But with everything that happened in the latter part of the campaign, in the transition following the election itself, and in things that have happened just over the past week and a half, I don't think it's really possible for me to do a nonpartisan analysis of the president's address. And even if I were able to do a nonpartisan analysis, I don't think that anybody would consider that nonpartisan. Even as I'm recording this, I can still hear the helicopters overhead monitoring one of the largest protest rallies in Seattle's history happening just downtown over the president's recent executive orders regarding immigration. So I'm not going to touch the inaugural address. I don't think it will help my goal of trying to help folks become better speakers. Instead, I'm going to talk about ways that you can enhance your credibility. So when I talk about credibility, I want to talk first of all a little bit about what it is and why it matters. And then I'm going to offer 6 different ways that you can enhance your credibility as a speaker. First of all, why does your credibility matter? Your credibility impacts how well your audience believes in what you're saying, how much trust that they give you. Just because you say something, just because you have a list of facts and you say them, it doesn't mean that people are going to believe them. There are several things that impact your credibility, and they're mostly on the side of the audience. It's what the audience thinks they know about your content, what the audience thinks they know about you, what the audience thinks they know about your organization, what the audience thinks they know about your purpose. And there are other things too. But the key thing to keep in mind here is that the way this is framed is it's what the audience thinks they know. They might hold false perceptions, or they might simply hold different perceptions than you. The truth of the situation, though, is much less relevant than how the audience perceives you. Their perceptions are what matters. And building credibility is about changing their perceptions and being someone that they can trust. Building credibility makes them believe you more. Facts and evidence in a presentation are great, but if the audience doesn't trust the source of those facts, you, then all the facts in the world just don't matter. We see this play out in internet discussions around issues like global climate change or questions around vaccinations. All the science in the world doesn't matter if the audience doesn't trust the messenger and doesn't trust the scientist. When we talk about why you should build credibility, remember, it's so you can accomplish the goal of your presentation. It's not about getting the audience to like you, although that helps. It's about getting the job done, whether that job is changing people's minds, whether it's informing decision makers, selling products, educating users. Your credibility, building your credibility helps you meet that broader goal, even though building your credibility is not a goal in and of itself. It's a tool. So I'm going to talk now about 6 ways that you can enhance your credibility. Yes, there are plenty of others, and I'd be very interested in hearing other tools that you use to increase your credibility. But to start with, I want to talk about these 6. And that's, first of all, meet your stated goals. 2nd, respect your time limits. 3, don't claim to be lying. 4th, make sure you follow up. 5, when you don't know, say, I don't know. And 6, honor your pre-event commitments. So let's talk about the first one, meet your goals. One of the most basic things to do to enhance your credibility is that when you say you're going to do something, make sure you do it. And when you are promoting a presentation in advance or sending out a meeting invite to invite people to attend your presentation or arranging it with an event planner, or whether you accept an invitation from someone else to speak, you likely explain the purpose of that presentation. Even if you don't explain the purpose of your presentation in advance, you at least begin your presentation by telling people what you're going to talk about. And doing that forms a commitment to or a contract with your audience. You've told them what you're going to do, what you're going to talk about. Make sure you do talk about that. If you don't meet the objectives that you set for yourself and for your presentation, for example, if you don't cover all the topics you said you were going to cover, then your audience may feel like you've deceived them, like you've invited them there under a false pretense. Failing to meet their expectations at the very least will make them feel disappointed, and more likely will lead them to trust you less in the future. And the most common reason that people don't meet their stated goals is that they run out of time. And this brings us to number 2. And number 2 is to respect your time limits. When you accept that slot or that schedule, you also commit to a time limit. That's another agreement that you make with your audience. If you say you're going to go for 30 minutes, you better go for 30 minutes and not 45. They are giving you their most precious resource, their time. So if you go over time, or if you go significantly under time, you're going to lose their trust. You've taken something they gave you that was very precious, and you've squandered it. At the very least, they're going to feel you can't manage your time properly. Plus, going way over time, it's rude. It's rude to your audience, it's rude to your event organizers, and it's rude to other speakers. Finish on time to build your credibility. So what can you do to finish on time more reliably? First of all, rehearse and practice. Know what you're going to say, know how long it's going to take you to say it. And the only way to do that is by practicing your content. Cut out extraneous comments that are in your presentation. If you have material you don't need, know where it is and know that you can cut it. A couple of weeks ago, I talked about the WBTU of a presentation, or why bring that up. Make sure that everything you're saying in your presentation is relevant, that it does support your points, and that it does bring value to your audience. Be vigilant about monitoring your WBTU. And when you practice, assume that you're going to lose some time for questions, or you're going to lose time for transitions from one speaker to another as you have to swap your laptops or connect things up or change inputs on a projector. Or if you have some humorous moments, assume that the audience may laugh and you'll lose some time to that, or that there are other audience activities as people may need to take an unexpected break, and that can all impact the time that you have. If you are given 50 minutes to speak to an audience, and if your presentation runs exactly 50 minutes when you practice it by yourself, your presentation is probably too long and you're likely to go over time. Start cutting, start managing that more aggressively. Honoring your time commitment will help your audience trust you. And having an audience trust you is great. That brings us to point number 3. Don't tell them that you were lying about other stuff. Have you ever heard a speaker say, well, to be honest, or honestly, or to tell you the truth, or I'll tell you the truth about this, or any other phrases like that? Many speakers actually use these phrases innocently as filter words. They're not even aware they're using them. They become words like and ah. Other speakers tend to use them for emphasis. They really want to make a point that this is important, so they'll say honestly or to tell you the truth. The problem is when a speaker is calling out this sentence as true, that implies that their other sentences are not. If the only true things you say are the ones you specifically tell me are true, why should I believe the rest of it? So go through your presentation, go through your practice, and try to purge these phrases from your vocabulary. They take up time and they don't help you. Method number 4 for enhancing your credibility is to follow up on the commitments you make while you speak. It's okay to not have an answer when somebody asks a question. But if you say during the presentation that you'll get back to them, then you'd better get back to them. Consistently following up helps your credibility because it shows that you mean what you say. Most people don't bother to follow up. Most people forget the commitments they make during their speeches, and they don't go ahead and do those follow-ups. So there are a few things you can do to make following up easier on yourself. Most importantly, make a note as soon as possible. You could even make that note during your presentation. Maybe it's on a whiteboard, or if you're using a tablet PC that supports ink, maybe you make a note on the slide itself, or you use it on make a note on a large flip chart, or maybe you make a note on a Post-it that you have readily available, or maybe you ask a colleague to go ahead and make that note for you. If you don't make the note during the session, do it immediately after the session before you forget. What I found is sometimes helpful when I am going ahead and making my notes for follow-up is to actually look at my slideshow again and go through my slides so I can look and say, okay, now when I was talking about these points on this slide, what was the audience reaction? Oh yeah, so-and-so had a question about that. And it helps me make those notes. There are a lot of different things you may need to follow up on after a presentation. They could involve sending out the slides to the group. It could involve emailing someone about an event, or answering a question, or doing a number of other different follow-ups. But the most common is in answering a question, which brings us to method number 5 for enhancing your credibility. And that's saying, I don't know. If someone asks you a question, it's okay to not have the answer. If it's a reasonable question, commit to getting an answer. Bluffing your way through it or faking it or lying can only hurt your credibility for a number of reasons. First of all, someone in the audience may know the actual answer. Also, while you're trying to fake your way through it or bluff your way through it, you may look nervous or less confident, which means folks will trust you less as a speaker. And finally, folks may just find out later that the answer you gave them was wrong or not true, and then they'll start questioning other things that you said. If you simply go ahead and say, I don't know, you're in a much better position to go ahead and follow up and get them the answer after the session. The other advantage you have in doing that is that when you get them that answer after the session, now you're also, again, reminding them about the things they heard from you during that session. We'll talk more in a future episode about handling tough questions and the very rare unfair question. But for now, keep in mind that there is no shame and there is no embarrassment in admitting that you don't know something. Finally, make sure that you meet your prep commitments. Often when you're setting up a presentation and working with an organizer, you may find yourself making some commitments. And it's important for your credibility at the very beginning to make sure that you meet those. And some of those simple things include being on time, bringing any equipment you said you were going to bring. If you said you were going to bring the projector or a computer or second copy of your slides on a flash drive or visual aids or demo gear or prototypes or any of those things that you said you were going to bring, make sure that you bring them. Bring any handouts that you committed to. And this is probably most important. But if you said you were going to bring donuts or cookies or pizza for the attendees, you'd better make sure that you bring those things. People get really serious about their snacks. You could walk into any office area with a bag of bagels and just watch all those heads pop up over those cubicle walls like it is the best day ever. On the flip side, nothing will turn a group of office workers from professional knowledge workers to a seething mass of rage faster than not bringing the snacks you volunteered to bring. And they will tell that tale for eons. You will be starting a war with your audience. In the Batman movie The Dark Knight, Alfred actually describes the Joker as someone who just wants to watch the world burn. In reality, the Joker didn't need to commit all those crimes in Gotham City. All he needed to do was not bring the donuts he promised to bring at enough places, and society would go ahead and collapse on its own. So if you say you'll bring the donuts, make sure you bring the donuts. So that's it. 6 easy ways to improve your credibility. Meet your stated goals. Respect your time limits. Don't claim to be lying. Follow up. Say, I don't know. And honor your pre-event commitments. So what do you do to increase your credibility? Let us know in the comments on this post at 2minutetalktips.com. And if you like this episode, please leave a rating and review about 2-Minute Talk Tips in iTunes. You can search for 2-Minute Talk Tips in iTunes itself, or visit the 2-Minute Talk Tips website and follow the links there. Until next week, practice managing your beam and building your credibility a little bit each day. Don't get best, get better.